Good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, December 30th, 2016. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Friday, everyone. It is a chilly 32 degrees and lightly snowing here in upstate New York. So where do we leave off yesterday? We titled the show Truth, Science, Space, Brain, and 21st Century Biotech Race. And I don't know, we've been talking about the same topics for weeks on end. But as we're spinning this yarn, we're deconstructing this big ugly ball of wax they put together, taking a look at each component and how they fit together and how it's going to affect you, me, and Nana. It's going to be pretty disturbing out there. We find out that they are able to totally 100% manipulate our brains, change thoughts, change the ability to make a decision. We saw that a few days ago. They can literally read your thoughts. We have this neurological surveillance center that they are rolling out as part of this 21st Century Cures Act and curing mental disorders on a spectrum. And, I do have to agree. I started digging into the DSM last night because there is some sort of DSM-esque tool online. And let me just see. Hold on. If I open my previously closed, I don't know how to do that here. This is a different browser. Oh, here. Previously closed. There they are. There was a psychcentral.com. It had this whole thing of all the disorders, and then you could click and all the symptoms. I was just kind of checking it out because we've been digging so much into the brain to see what kind of tools they currently have now. And what I found was interesting is they had a whole section. And actually, I might put this in the notes today. There was a whole section on psychological tests and quizzes. You can go through it. I mean, they were all like the types of ones that you would take if you were participating in a university study or whatever. Some were 20, some were 50 questions. And they were pretty well thought out. It wasn't, Joe's quizzes. These look like some pretty legit quizzes. But anyway, good news is I took 2 tests last night because I was like, oh, I should probably know this. So I wanted to find out if I had any type of autism spectrum disorder. Sometimes I think I do. But guess what? I don't. I tested way below. So that was happy. But what was the other one? Oh, damn. I don't remember what it was. But I took another one, too. The narcissist test. And no, I am not a narcissist. Those are those people that get me every single time. And no, I scored pretty low on that too, so that made me happy. But yeah, it might be kind of fun. But here's the thing. See, as they're going to start rolling this stuff out, so this is what they have today. They got these little online tests. Click, click, click. It's all quote unquote anonymous, which they can get your IP address no matter where you are, wherever you log in. So it's pegged and tagged and logged. But at least I didn't have to use my fingerprint and my eyeball scan to have to then take my psychological test as I get up in the morning before they allow me to leave my room in my new smart home in the world of 21st century America. No, they haven't done that yet, but I really wanted to understand. I should probably go take a few more of these tests tonight to see, because there's bipolar disorder, there's even personality types, borderline personality disorder, paranoid personality disorder, self-esteem, depression, loneliness, workplace bullying. Are you a bully? Do you beat up your coworkers and take your index finger and stick it in their chest? Well, then you're a bully. I'm going to put that page in the chat. You guys can take tests while you're listening to the show. But anyway, pretty interesting. But here's the thing. They've already developed these psychological profiles from the research up until this point. And now they are getting to the point where we are using high resolution imaging, real time fMRI scanning to be able to watch what areas of the brain act and interact while you're experiencing different things, different emotions, different physical sensations. And they are able to now very accurately manipulate thoughts, feelings, and they're even taking it a step further. Now it's not just in the old days, it was crack open the skull and poke around in that gray matter with some pointy thing and see what happens. Well, there's the arm. But now, because those are pretty impractical, they're using these sound devices and electrical devices to zippity zap and manipulate the chemicals that now are cracking the keys of the brain. I ran across a story. This nifty infographic is a great introduction to neuroplasticity and cognitive therapy. Starting to think of how we've got a spaceship billions of miles away rendezvousing with Pluto. Yet here on Earth, there are two major aspects of our own anatomy that we are almost completely ignorant about. We've climbed Mount Everest, set men on the moon, and invented the internet. But we still don't know how our brains work. I told you, it's all about cracking those keys. They're going to tell you we're spending bazillions of dollars, all in the name of curing Nana's Alzheimer's and the soldiers' PTSD. But guys, that isn't the end game. The end game is to be able to understand, manipulate, and control to the nth degree. And eventually, when required, your therapy will be reconditioning. That's what neuroplasticity is all about. It's being able to take the brain, and our brains typically, even animals, they learn while we're young, and then we establish habits through what we've learned. So if you haven't been taught properly, then when you get older, you potentially have quote unquote dysfunction because you're not operating within parameters. And it had been thought for a long time that people who had bad raising experiences, who never learned to pick up after themselves or whatever, I don't know. I mean, there's all these mental disorders too that, of course, they've tried to take back to some deficit in your upbringing, but they're finding that a lot of these are genetic. They're even just dysfunction in how the neurons are firing. But the one thing that they always thought is that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but they found out that actually you can. And this neuroplasticity is allowing them to go in and reprogram people. And I've talked about that a few times before. There was a story that we had covered about them reprogramming the brain to overcome fear. And I mean, they have been doing it a few different ways. They could literally use psychotherapy on you and keep doing this over and over and over again to retrain your brain, or they could zippity zap, use some of those optogenetics to be able to implant and remove memories. Just get rid of those traumatic memories, Jenny. You don't need to remember what you did over there. We'll make it all happy, and we can even insert new ones. We'll make that time period the time that you got that little puppy and how cute he was. I don't know. I mean, it really makes you wonder. All these science fiction movies we've seen over the years, just about anything you can think of now, they can do. And if not today, well, next week might be possible. We got billions of dollars pouring into these projects now because they are all official. The White House inked them and set them up for the next coming of the guards to take over. We discovered yesterday that one of the guys is part of Trump's cabinet. We called this. I mean, I Tell you what, guys, I wasn't on any side of the fence. I was just in the let's get Hillary out of here, let's get Obama out of here. But I don't think we had any super good choices, honestly. If you wanted to ask me who my ultimate presidential candidate would be, I can't think of one right now. It's too early. I don't know. It's hard on vacation days. Kids are off all this week, so it's just busy all day. And then this morning, of course, we were sitting watching Kiddie Entertainment. And I'm only on my first cup of coffee, maybe 4 sips in. But anyway, we all wanted to get off the potential Hillary Clinton bandwagon and having her in charge. And they've handed it over to Trump. And I can see exactly why he got elected. I mean, he scares me. I can tell you he scares me. He's one of those narcissistic personality disorders who tend to be very unpredictable. And I could profile that type of personality 100%. I've known too many of them. Those are always the ones that burn you in the end. Those are always the ones that are looking for their own benefits, but they make it look like they're doing it for you. But there's always something in it for them at the end. They are not selfless people. And that worries me. He's got lots of friends, and they're all getting these positions or having influence. And we established a long time ago that insider trading is kind of just brushed under the rug and nobody pays attention. The stock market went crazy in the biotech field right as the election happens, and we find out that there were a lot of people that knew about this 21st Century Cures Act. There are a lot of congressmen that are invested in the stock market under biotech as well. Guys, this is going to be a full-blown sell the American people for profit for this next administration. Like I said, it'll all be done in the name of healthcare. It's interesting that they brought up that whole Obamacare debacle, and that was a big part of the campaign. I mean, they didn't talk about even very many topics at all. Obamacare was one, so it was right in the front of your mind. Remember, attention of a goldfish. So we had to make sure we put it there. But now we have this Cures Act that nobody still is talking about. It's not even on the mainstream, but you're going to get it as a part of convenience. They're going to roll this out. Your doctors, see, they got their Trojan horses. Your doctors are going to introduce this to you in the privacy and in the intimacy of the exam room. They're going to tell you that it's safe. This is the new way we do it. Look at how cool this is. Doot, 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 doot. Doctor's smartphone is there 24/7 when I can't be. He can even answer questions. You can even take a photo of your rash, and he'll identify it for you. And Dr. Smartphone will give you 22 things you could try on Susie before you ever have to bring her in and pay your appointment copay. And now with copays being insane and what are they calling the out of pockets being off the charts, where they cover anything. Oh, you got to spend $5,000 out of pockets before the insurance kicks in. So nobody's going to want to go to the doctor. I mean, they really set this up so nicely as to how they're going to roll it out. But add to the healthcare this big mental health component. We've talked about this. There's a whole section of that law that's about mental health and surveillance. A neurological surveillance division, or whatever they were calling NOC, Network Operations Center. We had read about that long before we saw the text of this 21st Century Cures Act. I don't know, I would say it was a good 3-4 months ago. We had run across a story where psychiatrists were saying we needed some sort of network monitoring operation center for neurological, whatever you want to call them. I don't know, neurological surveillance. I mean, they were already talking about, and I was under the impression they were talking implants. Of course, the bill says it's non-invasive. We find out they got all this electrical medicine that they can scan things with. So anyway, and now we find out that our brains are a lot more neuroplastic than they ever thought, so they can reprogram them when we are adults. So anyway, we've known things about the internet and space and Pluto, but we don't know how our brains work. The positive outlook is that many health, science, and research specialists now believe that we are on the precipice. That's instead of the apex. Yes, we're on the precipice. We are looking down, and it is a 20,000-foot drop down there. Oh, don't get dizzy, Johnny, and don't let the wind blow, because that's about where we're at. But many health science research specialists believe we are on the precipice of some major, they say, neuroscientific breakthroughs. One example of a recent discovery with a major implication is our further understanding of neuroplasticity, i.e., being able to reprogram you. Simply put, we used to think our brain was what it was, unchangeable, unalterable, and we were stuck with what nature gave us, or, there was always that psychological argument over nature versus nurture. Back in Psychology 101 class in college, I remember we saw a couple movies. They were all 1940s and 50s, black and white. One was a Milgram's Experiment. I remember when that was actually done. That might have been done in the 60s, but it was still black and white film where they told people that they were shocking them, and no matter what, they had to follow directions and blah, blah, blah. And they found that the majority of people would actually follow directions of authority to the point of killing, or what they thought was killing, electrocuting the subject. They were trying to prove how Nazi Germany kind of happened. Sad fact of the matter is we're seeing our very own real life Milgram experiment happening right now in the United States. But the second movie that I distinctly remember seeing in our Psych 101 class, and I used to hate that because it was in a big lecture hall, and they'd turn the lights down, and you had these big, cushy, comfy, theater seating. It was really easy. I was working 3 jobs in college, remember. It was really easy to close my eyes and take a little nappy in that big room. But I did watch this one, and it was the one about nature versus nurture versus nature. They're experimenting with the poor little baby monkeys, and I know they're horrible. I really hated any of those old films that they showed us. Always had stuff that just I was not kosher with at all. Anything to do with experimentation on animals, I'm not good with experimentation on anything. I think they should use some tin can jobs. Kill all robots, experiment on all robots. That would be fine with me. But anyway, so this nurture versus nature, they had 2 wire forms, like the old school mannequin type stuff, where they would, you'd see them in New York City in a textile place or a designer, clothes designer shop. And they would be half body wire forms, where it's the shape of the top of the neck and the arms to put the clothes on to make them display nicely. And they had 2 of those. And one was just as the skeletal metal wire mesh. And one was covered with fuzzy fur. And they put those into a cage with a little baby monkey. I don't know. I don't think they had them in the same cage. There must have been 2 different cages, 2 different monkeys. And they wanted to see when that little monkey grew up, the little monkey who had the furry body to cling onto versus the little monkey that had the wire form body to cling onto. And it was so sad because that poor little monkey that didn't have the fur, that didn't have that tactile, pleasurable sensation, became very disturbed. And they followed him for a while as he grew up. And that little monkey would sit there and rock back and forth, honestly, guys, heart-wrenching, rip out, tears in your eyes. It was so horribly sad that they had done this to this little monkey. And, like I said, they had always believed that our experiences when we were growing up, our parents could fuck us up pretty good. And a lot of it, see, there is no instruction manual. So a lot of it happens just because your parents were who they were. They weren't reading any psych book to figure out how it was going to affect you 20 years down the line. It's just the environment that you grew up in. I was reading something else too the other day. Maybe it was a movie we saw. We've been watching the 1992 remakes of Godzilla versus. So we saw Godzilla versus Megalotron and Godzilla versus Mothra. And then Mothra also had some sort of altered evil ego that came and attacked. Then they became friends. But those movies are just so damn funny. I couldn't get over it. But one of the guys, I don't even know who he was, but one of the guys the channel was using to introduce the marathon was talking about when he was a kid. And they ran a pawn shop, and somebody had brought in a full-size Godzilla outfit as a Halloween costume, and they bought it for like $80 from him at the pawn shop. And then when he was a kid, they spent his childhood on holidays going around to strip clubs with, and I don't know if it was his father or whoever, or his mother, dressed in the Godzilla outfit, and they'd make all kinds of money. And I thought to myself, wow, I never thought that anything would top having a grandmother that owned a bar and growing up in a tavern half the time and seeing lots of horrible things. And my sister and I are kind of unique in that fact, though I have met my best friend Heidi. Her grandparents owned a bar too, so it's something we had in common. But I never thought that would be topped. Most people don't have a grandma who had a bar that they grew up in and used to have their birthday parties at every year, combined with the Super Bowl party. Nope. But this guy took the cake. His parents bought a Godzilla costume from a pawn shop and used to take it at holidays. And they would take him too to the strip club and raise money. But you know what? We all turned out okay. Kind of. I still think I have issues. But you got to learn to control them. But here's the thing. They have now discovered, and that was many years. I mean, this has taken me almost 50 years to identify on my own. It's never, ever, ever, unless it's required. I would never, ever, ever talk about what goes on in my head with someone on the outside. I'm going to warn you, we have people out there. There are definitely, there are people who could use some help. Okay. Sometimes it's just too big. My issues were never too big. They were little, but they caused me grief. They caused me problems in interpersonal relationships or trying to get along or make friends or get a job or whatever. There are personality traits that we all have that bite us in the ass sometimes. And there are those of us who try to improve ourselves, make ourselves a better person. There are those of us who don't give two shits. I don't know. I waffle. Sometimes I just don't give two shits. And sometimes those personality flaws are actually like my superpowers. The powers of annoyance are pretty powerful sometimes. But on the whole, I really try being a good person and not being annoying and trying to be helpful to others without any expectation of anything in return. Because you don't help others because you're expecting something. You help others because you truly feel it. You do things without any expectation. And that, that takes a long time to get there. When you're a kid, they teach us to chase that dangling carrot. Bernays taught us to chase the dangling carrot. We've been conditioned to do things with the expectation of a reward. That's why that dangling dopamine carrot is so strong, and that's why they use it to manipulate us, because we have been conditioned like mice in a maze from the time we were children to react to that stimuli. It's all right. I kind of got off. I mean, not really. We're all talking about brain. But let's get back to this neuroplasticity thing. This really is scary. So now as they're realizing that, hey, Johnny, even though you spent all your holidays in a strip club with your mommy dancing in a Godzilla outfit from the pawn shop, you turned out okay. So, little zippity zap here and there. We could fix you. And like I said, they have come up with ways to insert and remove memories now, to read your thoughts, to tell whether or not you're depressed. And the next thing Dr. Smartphone's going to be able to do is diagnose you with some of these psychological tests just using your voice patterns. And I'm telling you, you guys should definitely look at some of those quizzes from that psychcentral.com, because it's going to be similar to that. At least from the DSM perspective, they're going to have those types of analyses to determine your personality profile. Because remember, that's Alphabet Agencies. Every single one of us has a dossier. The NSA on down. And they want us in the database. Everything about you, but particularly your personality profile, because that is the first step to determine whether or not you could potentially be a danger, whether or not you are on the targeted list for being neutralized or being reconditioned, whether or not in the future you could be a terrorist. Facial recognition. There are lawsuits now rolling out against Facebook because of their facial recognition algorithm. Maybe we will look at that a little bit later. All right, so anyway, back to this neuroplasticity. So it's all starting to make sense now, I hope. I hope I'm connecting these dots, because I was kind of all over the place, but still don't know how our brains work. And we now believe, health science and research specialists believe, that we are on the precipice of some major neuroscientific breakthroughs. One example of a recent discovery with major implications is our further understanding of neuroplasticity. Simply put, we used to think our brain was what it was, unchangeable, unalterable, and we were stuck with what nature gave us. But in actuality, our brains are like plastic. And not that hard plastic, that soft plastic full of chemicals, hormone disruptors. We can mold you like putty. We can alter neurochemistry. Ding, 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 ding. Neurochemistry, like dopamine, to change your beliefs, your thought processes, and emotions. And you are the architect of your brain. You also have the power to act against dangerous impulses such as addiction. And remember, another large component of this 21st Century Cures Act was going after addiction, guys, because that addiction button is the dopamine button. See, DARPA started that research way back, looking at how to push those chemical buttons to manipulate brains, all in the name of trying to understand how to fix PTSD. When a soldier gets scared on the battlefield, they want to be able to know immediately while they're monitoring and push a button on a joystick to make them not afraid by releasing some new adrenaline or something, brain chemical or hormone. Even if it's just through an electrical zippity zap process, which they've discovered that as well. They can do that with the vagus nerve. But they have been messing around with those neurochemical changes and how to manipulate them for quite a while. So now this addiction thing, this dopamine button that they've been using to suck us into the machine, they now have a whole ton of research money on, and a new law. And the therapeutic, and this is what it says, the therapeutic possibilities are endless. Okay, let's go back to the movie called Brazil and think about room, I don't know, it looked like room 101. I don't know what they called it in Brazil. She had one of the Monty Python guys with that porcelain, really scary looking Japanese room 471 mask on as they are torturing people in a chair. And that's what I think of, with some sort of head thing on, that they're sucking your thoughts out of your head. I mean, it's just frightening. These are the dystopian nightmares that I had as a child. Always included some sort of deep, dark hallway where really scary, scary stuff was going on like this. So I just, you know, the other thing I was going to read and do a test on was OCD. Because people would maybe say that I'm a little obsessive about covering this information on a daily basis. But guys, this scares me so bad you don't even know. And you at least have to give me credit for facing my fears head on. And my weapons are learning as much as I possibly can about it and how it works. Trying to find the chinks in their armor. Trying to find what's going to work better than tinfoil. I don't think the tinfoil is going to work. Below, broken up into two parts, is a terrific infographic. And there's a big hunk of gray matter in the middle, detailing the essence of what we know about neuroplasticity and how it works. It was created by the folks of Altamira, San Francisco-based area rehabilitation and recovery center. Rewiring the brain. And actually, it's pretty cool. It's got pictures of neurons and brains and whatever. This would make a good poster. Right here above my desk. Anyway, rewiring the brain. Teaching an old dog new tricks. Ding! There you go. I think we got to put that in the title of today's show. Previously, scientists thought that the brain structure was hardwired and immutable. Brain damaged patients rarely made full recoveries. Yeah, but wait a minute. We found out those little mini brain balls, they might change everything, even though they put the kibosh on that experiment that they were going to take those brain dead patients here in the U.S. and ship them over to India and then inject them with those pluripunant brain stem cells, see if they can wake them up. I bet they're doing that down a deep, dark hallway somewhere. Wink. Since nobody wanted to participate, brain damaged patients rarely made full recoveries, and the living brain's microscopic activities were up until this point unobservable. And the widely held belief was that the brain was a machine. And machines are capable of many things, but they do not change and grow. Well, hate to tell you, Clyde, 21st century machines do. Any of these little DNA nanobody thingies are all living, and they are evolving, and they are reproducing. And we even have robots now, mommy robots, building baby robots with her best characteristics, showing that they evolve. We have that synthetic X and Y DNA proteins that they created that also have been able to be put into DNA strands and then reproduce. Guys, the machines can reproduce. They're going to be skin jobs someday soon. The tin cans are coming. We'll be able to just download ourselves. We got all this shape-shifting matter. You know, we haven't covered any of that stuff for a while, but DARPA's got all these programs shape-shifting everything, including matter, immune systems, antiviruses. Yeah. We're going to have plants that can be genetically modified while they are already full-size grown just by launching some insects who have been infected with genetically modified bacteria. And it's just crazy, guys. I said yesterday, we live in this upside-down world getting sucked into a black hole right now. And if you're feeling like that's what it is, well, it's not that we're going crazy. Nope. It's that something happened. The world is upside down crazy, and it's not us. New research has taught us that the brain is actually plastic. Well, they should have used a different word because there are some people who don't understand what the word plasticity means. And no, the brain isn't literally plastic. The brain is actually, but it does say, New research has taught us that the brain is actually plastic. So I would bet you, these people, we don't know how to distinguish between what's true and not true or how to decode things. There are probably people walking around out there going, oh my God, I read this science article the other day in Big Think. Remember, that's with big letters for the American public who wants little science sound bites. I want to sound smart, but really don't dig into the details. So there are going to be people at the water cooler going, hey, Johnny, I read this story the other day in this scientific magazine called Big Think that says that in new research has shown that the brain is actually plastic. We got plastic in our brain. We don't have plastic in our brains. New research has taught us that the brain is actually plastic, comma, it is able to change based on experiences. Now, that comma was very important there. It's kind of like the sentence, let's go eat grandma. With no comma, it's let's go eat grandma. But with the comma, it is let's go eat grandma. That's always one of my favorites. Okay, anyway, even in old age, the adult brain retains neuroplasticity. So even the old guys, even those old crunchies that won't get with the program, we will recondition you. The adult brain retains neuroplasticity and it is able to change its structure and its function. And it turns out that you can teach an old dog new tricks. Neurons process and transmit information through electrical and chemical signals. There are around 86 billion neurons in the human brain. Yeah, but they are working really hard to be able to map every single one of them as part of the Connectome project. Synapses. And I used to have a saying when I would forget something, I would call it a synapse misfire. And that's kind of what it is. Synapses are the small gaps between the neurons, and they allow the information to pass from one neuron to the next. At birth, we have approximately 2,500 synapses. At 3 years old, we have 15,000 synapses. But as an adult, it is use it or lose it, people. 50% of the neurons do not survive into adulthood, as the ones that are rarely used are eliminated all throughout your adolescence. And I had read a story, I think it was called pruning. I don't remember what area of the brain it was, but it was this process called pruning. And they had discovered in one of the diseases, maybe it was schizophrenia, I don't know, this was a while ago, but I was reading a pretty deep scientific paper that they had published. And you guys are probably like, Jill, Jesus Christ. I mean, guys, I'm telling you what, something else that produces dopamine, I don't know if we covered this, I think we did, was searching for information and finding details. That's, again, a little piece of cheese for that dopamine button. And if you have to have a dopamine addiction, and I mean, it motivates me. I got to be motivated on a daily basis to do this, guys, because there really is no, I mean, there's a reward in the end. I can sit back and go, we got information out there, but there's got to be something that motivates you to get your ass out of bed every morning to do something like this. And really what it is sharing what I've learned and connecting all those dots and being able to present. It's like we do a presentation on a daily basis. I used to do all right in college, by the way, guys. I used to have to whip it all together pretty fast, put it together. Even working in corporate America, I was a sales engineer for years. So we were out. I used to have to wear a suit to work every day. We would go out with salespeople and I'd put together presentations. And, there were just so many of them. And, designing networks and then putting together a presentation. And then you'd have to go present it to all the alphabet big boys, CEO, CFO, CIO, and then convince them persuasively to buy it. and sell to them all the reasons why they need to spend $500,000 to upgrade their network. You know, I, I don't know. It gets to the point where searching for information right now seems to be a weapon. It is the best weapon. This is, I've heard them say on Antimedia's show about how they really hate to use this term, and I try not to use it, but it is true. That whole info war thing, they've declared war on information and on truth, and on what's available and what's not, and on who can think and who can't, who can use deduction, who can do good research and who can't. And it really is this war on our brains. That's what it's come down to. It's war on our biology. And this whole psyop that is spinning out, this whole game that they're playing, they're making everyone question what is real and what is not. I mean, guys, and then we have the advent of all this high-speed internet, this 5G crap they're bringing down with these little microsatellites. I put all kinds of stuff in the notes. We discussed some of that again yesterday, but, don't forget, that is going to connect us to this internet of everything. And this internet of everything is going to be able to surveil us at a cellular, DNA, and electrical, chemical level. Biosensors are the new thing. Motley Fool says in the next 4 years, they're going to make all kinds of billionaires out there because the selling of the people of the world to the machine is very profitable. Anyway, so use it or lose it. The adult brain loses up to 50% of its neurons from adolescence all the way through adulthood. And like I said, that pairing, that's what it was. Your brain naturally does pairing. And when you don't use things, kind of gets rid of them. It's like cleaning out the garbage in your head. If you don't use it, you got something that's been sitting in a box for 20 years in a crawl space, you probably could get rid of it or sell it on eBay. Make a few bucks if it's worth something. But there's no reason to be sitting around taking up all this empty space if it's not being utilized. So the same thing in the brain, but they think, I'm pretty sure it was schizophrenia. But excuse me if it's the wrong mental disease, but there was one of them, one disorder, that this pairing function kind of went a little awry, and it started cutting neuronal connections that were still in use, and it shouldn't have been, and it caused some real issues. So anyway, back to this information dopamine button searching. So if there was a dangling carrot that you chased after, don't let it be cocaine or sex or booze or gambling or your electronic devices. Every time you get a little ding, let it be the search for truth and let it be the search for knowledge. Music also activates dopamine. I just want to be careful with that. I'm telling you what, the more and more and more I'm digging into sound and manipulation of biological organisms and things that it is doing or can do, different frequencies to our brain, shattering cancers with resonance with that resonant frequency. And I posted on the Before the First Cup Facebook page, probably fed out to Twitter, there was a screenshot of a book I found on Google, and I was almost thinking I'd like to get it, except it was like $60 for the ebook because it's a medical, pretty deep medical research journal. But they had been already doing experimentation with using frequencies. What prompted me to look at this is that I had mentioned I had read some stuff about a disintegration ray that was in development right now. And I was trying to find that story, and I couldn't actually find that story that I've been reading, what they were working on in the lab, but I found the book that it talked about some of the experimentation that they were doing with resonant frequencies and biological matter. And I got to tell you, I was absolutely right. I knew I had read it. If they can find the resonant frequency of the bonds that connect up the connective tissue in our bodies, and then blast those in our bodies, it breaks those bonds that hold the entire biological structure together apart. It's very frightening, guys. I don't know. You can go. I titled it fascia. F-A. Well, that's what it was called. Fascia, and I think that is some of that water tension stuff. Fascia, the tensional network of the human body, and they look at the water and the connectivity and the tissues and how that all goes together, and they look at in this little snippet of an article the frequency oscillations in the resonance that would cause things to fall apart. And one of the things they use as an example was there was a bridge in 1991, I believe, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. There was a storm, and the wind actually caused a frequency that happened to be the resonant frequency of the bridge. Oh, no, it wasn't in 91. They were citing an article in 91. So I don't know even when this was, but it was the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. And it hit that resonant frequency. The entire bridge fell apart like it was a suspension bridge. And I vaguely remember that. It just disintegrated. It hit the resonance frequency of the materials in that bridge, and it just fell apart. Guys, we are working right now on weaponry. We looked at WMDs, CRISPR. I mean, there's a lot of this new technology that will be utilized as potential WMDs. We talked about digital rights management that DARPA is working on to lock down our genome so you couldn't have some Chinese mad scientist come in and reprogram us so we start growing arms out of the backs of our heads. One day you wake up and you got fingers sticking out. What's that? I'm growing horns. No, they're just fingers. But, and I know this sounds so insane and I kind of laugh about it, but it's because I can't do anything else. It's just so beyond bizarre that we are at this point and there are all these secrets that are being cracked. All this money being dumped in. And it's now about manipulating matter and cells and energy. And then to be able to remold them. So anyway, off that side note, we'll deal with disintegration rays and sounds being able to push dopamine buttons at some point in the future. But just for me, I think is a positive change for 2017. Let's all make our addiction searching out truth. Because searching out truth pushes that dopamine button, which will get you to follow the Pied Piper somewhere. Well, let's follow it to the top of the mountain. Because it is going to be a war. It's a war on what is real and what is not, and what is true and what is not, and what you believe and what you don't, and what all the people around you believe and what they don't. They're going to pit us against each other. And the one thing I have to say is that I know, guys, most people don't appreciate or spend time going through the notes I put on the show and the archives on YouTube every day. But I'm going to tell you the reason I do that, and I spend a couple hours every day after the show finding reputable publications to back up stuff I've been talking about, or as reputable as I can. But most of the time, scientific journals, like we've established, who knows what's true and what's not, but at least my source material so you can research it for yourself. But if we can all come up with stuff like that and stuff that isn't on some sort of targeted fake news site. I mean, I don't know. Fake news sites are okay if they're reputable. But if you're trying to show Aunt Susie why all those stories in the paper that she's been reading about these fake news lunatics are wrong, showing her a fake news article to prove that article about fake news wrong, isn't going to help. You're going to need to find something in the mainstream or something in a scientific publication that says, look. And when you can stand on the top of that mountain and profess that you are actually correct and they are trying to psyop you all, and then hold up that piece of paper that's got all the proof on it because you took the time to do your due diligence. You chased that dopamine carrot down the rabbit hole of truth and you found it. came back up like a little doggy. Actually, my little kitten, he runs around like a little doggy with his toys in his mouth. It's so cute. You come up, you got that tail dangling, and then you show it to them and go, look, you know, the neuroscience journal says blah, 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 blah. And look, they've had 10,000 participants. And they have kind of proven that this is true. I don't know. I think you have a lot more leverage than in the future to establish your credibility versus the mainstream and this propaganda department as part of this NDAA 2013 and now 2017 that is about ready to roll out full force with the changing of the guards. So anyway, very last but not least, let's read the bottom part of this neuroplasticity story. So we found out, use it or lose it, in an adult, 50% of our neurons do not survive into adulthood if they are rarely used. So start exercising those neurons and push that dopamine button with your quest for truth. Okay? Stick to reputable or established sources and build your brain. Make those neurons increase. You know, even after a stroke, they have found that people who have brain damage after a stroke can regain a lot of their brain functionality through physical therapy, mental therapies, but that the brain itself will actually build new neuronal connections around the damaged areas of the brain. So, you know, they can teach an old dog new tricks, and your brain is mutable, and they want to learn how that works so they can take advantage of it, because remember, the key is to be able to quote unquote cure us. And as they define mental disease on a spectrum, like I said, I do kind of believe, as I've been digging into the DSM and looking at how rigid these definitions are, you know, you have this, and this. Well, you have this disease. Well, this disorder. Let's not call it a disease. Let's call it a mental disorder. And we can give you these drugs, or we can give you this zippity zap and fix it. But their new thing, and this is good old Tommy Insel. I don't know. Tommy Insel's come up a lot in 2016. But Tommy Insel over at Google's Verily, former director of the National Institute of Mental Health up until October 2015, went over to Google to come up with ways to diagnose and cure mental disease utilizing voice patterns on a smartphone. It's going to be that easy. And they're already working with all the kinds of different ways to then influence those brain patterns, reprogram you, bring you back into parameters. And as Tommy Insel says, he wants to toss out that DSM and be able to diagnose on a spectrum. You know, I think all of us have some sort of mental deficiency on a spectrum. Just some are more to the right and some are more to the left and some of us are more in the middle. And again, it's all based upon our life experiences as well as some of it is genetic. You can pass down traits and even epigenetic, they have discovered through your parents and your grandparents and some of the trauma that they experienced in their lifetimes. You know, that gets ingrained in your makeup. Neurogenesis. Da, da, da. Gotta love anything with the word Genesis in it. The production of neurons beginning at week 3 of human development happens at a rate, if you can believe it, at 250,000 neurons a minute, starting at week 3 until birth at the end of 9 months. I mean, talk about an amazing machine. Creation of a human. Fertilization. 250,000 neurons a minute created starting at week 3 until birth. It's insane. Neurogenesis may continue to occur throughout the human lifespan. And in 1999, researchers at the Salk Institute, and we read about that Salk Institute yesterday, they had some involvement in that company called Brainwave that one of Trump's sidekicks worked at, where they were learning to reprogram the brain. They also had that KGB agent that was on the board. I don't know. That was a pretty nutty story. Trying to find that Trump aide. Oh, the Brain Fingerprinting Company. That's what it was. The Salk Institute was mentioned in there as well. Trump aide served on the board of a brain fingerprinting company with a KGB spy. They were titled Brainwave. That was the name of the company. But, as they're doing more and more of this research, we find out how to create and destroy neurons and what they do and how they work. There will be no freedom left. You will not have control over your own brain anymore, especially not as they discover how to use energies, sounds, frequencies to be able to manipulate those neurons. We found out already they can use Wi-Fi in your house at a distance to determine your emotions. I was digging into some of the millimeter wave stuff yesterday afternoon to see what they were working on too for long distance chemical reading and how invasive that is. They can use those millimeter wave scanners already to be able to tell from 164 feet away at an airport what you have for breakfast. It's literally a molecular scanner. They are using millimeter wave, some of the biosensors, to be able to detect different substances. They are using them in outer space, and some of the probes to be able to scan the planets and asteroids to determine what elements exist there. And if it isn't millimeter wave, it'll be something else. But I think at some point in the future, they literally are going to be able to not only manipulate, but read exactly what's going on in our heads from a distance. And oh my God, guys, I can't believe it's even over. I only got through one story. All right, guess what? Have a happy new year, and I will catch up with you on Monday. Everybody, take care.
Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.